We're here at the highbrow Massachusetts Institute of Technology to talk about, of all things, a theory that helped me just a ton when I had encountered God, but then had a tough time finding my way into churches. And over the years, as I've talked to people, I've met a ton of other people who've also felt really helped by this, helped to understand why some churches have not worked all that well for them and why they don't have to judge that, but actually can understand maybe more of what they need. It's a theory that was put together by this psychologist named M. Scott Peck, now deceased, who wrote what I think is the best-selling book of the 80s called The Road Less Traveled. Years later, he gave a lecture on stages of spiritual development. And here was his theory. His theory was that as we progress emotionally, we should also progress spiritually through certain stages, but that none of us quite do that because we get arrested along the way because of trauma. And understanding those stages, he felt, could help us understand why we sometimes talk past each other, certainly when talking about things like faith, but maybe about other things as well. His stage one, I would call criminal. This would loosely tie into being a toddler. Toddlers are cute and charming, but they can't necessarily focus on you and your needs. So if a toddler is tantruming over a toy and I walk up to help them out, it'd be the rare toddler who would say, "You know what, Daddy? I don't need to cry about this. How's your day been? It's not all about me." They can't do it. They're toddlers. You might argue that the institutions that best support stage one are jail because it gives concrete boundaries to a very chaotic world. Some people would say maybe the boardroom or some other place where having a will to power can help you out. Stage one could also work well there too. Stage two would loosely correspond to being 6 or 7. It's when you start caring what mommy and daddy want you to do, and I might call the stage rules-based. So institutions that might best support a stage 2 setting would be the military. It's famously a transitional institution for people coming out of stage 1 and moving into society and getting good boundaries for how to become productive citizens. Or churches, Peck argues. He would argue actually that most churches are stage 2. They exist to help people understand things that are good, things that are bad, things that are right, things that are wrong. Things like that. Now, he is at pains not to judge this. He says all societies around the world are made up, if his theory has any validity, by stage 2, by people who are good citizens, and that's what stage 2 does well. But be that as it may. Stage 3, this would loosely correspond to being a teenager, and you might call it rebellious. At this point, you feel like, who died and made all those stage 2 rules the rules? And you start asking, for instance, famously, why can't I have sex before marriage? Or some question like that that's a hard one, but you actually want to know. If the stage 2 world around you, maybe your parents or your teachers or your church leaders say, be quiet, you little smart aleck, and don't answer the question, it can confirm you in the rebellious stage, where now what you believe is, those people don't know anything. There are no good answers, and you become a skeptic, you become a doubter. The institution that I would say best supports stage 3 is right where I'm at. The university is the home of stage 3. At that point, you become kind of hardened against all things stage 2. In fact, whole communities can be different stages. So stereotypically, perhaps the Bible Belt in America might be a stage 2 world, and maybe Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I'm sitting now, might be a stage 3 world. Maybe France would be a stage 3 world. And they often fight politically in ways that I sadly don't have time to get into, but you can imagine how political parties or affiliations might go to one stage or another. But what people in stage 3 don't fully understand is that there is in fact a stage 4, Peck would argue, that there are answers to the questions they have. And he might call stage 4 mystical. At this point, what you begin to realize is that the things you learned in stage 2 might in fact be true, but be true in a different, more open-ended way than perhaps you understood then. So in my world where you're looking at the Bible, I'm a pastor, you might look at a phrase like, believe in Jesus and be saved. In stage 2, what you might say is, well, I do. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on this day and this date. From that point forward, I know I'm going to heaven. In stage 4, you might look at the same thing and say, I think that's true. I think I do believe in Jesus, but I want to believe and keep believing. What does belief look like? I'm trying to figure that out. Saved. Does that mean I'm going to heaven? Great, I'm all for it. Or does that mean that my life can be transformed now, which a good deal of the New Testament seems to argue? I want that sort of transformation. How do I get it? What you discover is that stage 4 is full of questions in the same way that stage 2 was full of answers. Almost as if you've just entered into a vast world of truth that's going to take you a lifetime to explore. It's all truth, and that truth is everywhere around you, which is really big. Whereas in stage 2, maybe we would regard truth as being a little more manageable, something we can get our hands around, and we can now understand it. Basically, we can get it down. In stage 4, you realize that's just not possible, and that's actually the adventure of it. I was so engaged by this stage theory that I ended up writing a book about it called Not the Religious Type, Confessions of a Turncoat Atheist. So I hope you'll check that out. I also started a whole community of faith about it here both in Boston, where there's a site, and in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we're around these interesting people who work at places like Harvard and also work in just normal jobs. And we've had a really engaging experience fleshing this out, figuring out what this means for us. I also have a blog on the subject at notreligious.org, where people almost every day are interacting around what this might mean for their life. So feel free to check that out as well. And one way or another, here's to a great journey of life, of faith, of truth, really whatever your journey looks like for you.